This is your government video for the 8th and Ninth Amendment, capital punishment and privacy. So the 8th Amendment is here. Take a second to read this. So the 8th Amendment is known as bail or cruel and unusual punishment. So once you have been found guilty in a court of law through a due process, then some sort of punishment is to be applied to that case. And the government or the courts, their job is to determine what that is. What the Eighth Amendment is saying is that you can't impose something that is not within the realm of the crime. So you can't put somebody to death, for example, for stealing a car. They want the punishment to commiserate with the crime. Now, you've also had something in there about excessive bail. So, bail is often offered during the process of the trial, and you pay your bail, and that assures that you show up to your trial date, which is some point in the future. And if you show up to the trial, then you get your money back. But if you skip bail or you flee and you don't show up, then the courts get to keep your money. So, they have to set bail to something reasonable to the crime. Or reasonable to your chance of fleeing. So if you are extremely wealthy and you have a lot of money and you can just flee the country and live in some other country, then that bail is going to be higher than somebody who can't afford it. The bail will also be set higher for somebody who is accused of murder as opposed to something like trespassing. So the courts over time have obviously changed what they mean by cruel and unusual punishment, by excessive bail because particularly with cruel and unusual punishment, as technology changes and we do more science and we realize that some forms of punishment are cruel, or we have invented some more humane way to put somebody to death through capital punishment. Our federal government still does not have any law requiring or banning the death penalty. We let each state decide if they want to use the death penalty and which options do they want to use for the death penalty. So in the past, we used things like hanging or firing squads. Today, we use some form of lethal injection. And then the types of medications used in lethal injection change, again, as we determine new forms of humane treatment. And this is also changes depending on the makeup of the court. So as people on death row take their case to the Supreme Court, the people on the court get to decide if that particular punishment is cruel and unusual and therefore banned, or it is legal. Now, the Ninth Amendment is the catch-all amendment. So take a second to read this. Remember, they were afraid, at least the Federalists were afraid, that if you made a list of rights in the Bill of Rights and said, these are all the rights people have, the government can never take away. Well, what happened if you forgot to write one down? So they added in the Ninth Amendment, and this is basically saying the things written in the Constitution cannot be construed or denied by the government to take away any other rights you have. So if it's not written down, it doesn't mean that citizens don't have that right, and it doesn't mean that the government can't take it away. So the Ninth Amendment is used for all the other rights that are not there. The biggest one being the right to privacy. You have the right to privacy from intrusion by the government, and a lot of times right to privacy is also not just used in the Ninth Amendment, but they use freedom of speech, the warrantless search and seizures and things like that from other amendments. We talked about Roe v. Wade as one of your required cases. This is the major abortion decision from the 70s, in which they said health decisions should be between a woman and the doctor, and the government doesn't have the right to step in and change the doctor's recommendation. Now, they went a little bit further and said in the first trimester of a pregnancy, it's completely a woman's right to choose. The second trimester, states can make restrictions if they want. And then the third trimester, only no abortions except for life of the mother, rape, or incest. And Roe v. Wade, along with some other similar types of healthcare laws, uphold individuals' right to privacy from government intrusion. It also recognizes that states have an interest to protect potential life and health of a potential life, meaning the life of the baby as well. All right, so active learning 6 is fairly long. I've given you, there's actually 4 questions here, and these are theoretical cases that I just made up. I want you to take a look at these, random scenarios, and I want you to think about, A, who's at fault here, and how would the government or how would the Supreme Court decide this case? Would somebody be at fault? Would somebody not be? Which Supreme Court cases or which parts of the Constitution would be used? So these are the first 2. And I want you to do these on your active learning paper. And then questions 3 and 4 are here. Feel free to pause the video and finish your active learnings on paper.